Become more observant and more respected, because silence gives you leverage, and leverage is everything. Look around you. The loudest people in any room are usually compensating. They confuse volume with value, chaos with charisma, impulsiveness with influence. But the Stoics knew better. They built their mental strength on restraint. Emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about knowing when and how to express them. And most of the time, it's about holding them, not to impress anyone, but to protect your energy, your time, and your position. A man who always reacts is a man who is easily controlled. But a man who pauses, observes, and chooses his moment to speak, that man becomes unpredictable. He becomes effective because his words are few, but they land like thunder. The executive mindset, why leaders speak less in leadership. The smartest men don't walk into meetings trying to dominate the conversation. They don't interrupt, overcompensate, or prove how smart they are. They sit back. They listen. They let other people expose themselves. They speak last, and when they do, the room falls quiet. Why? Because people know it's going to matter. Because that man has observed the entire room, tracked every weakness, every tension, every contradiction, and when he opens his mouth, it's with clarity, precision, impact. That's real intelligence. That's strategic power. In Stoic philosophy, the goal is not to control others, it's to control yourself. In any situation. Aurelius practiced this daily in the chaos of the Roman Empire, surrounded by betrayal, politics, war, and pressure. He didn't yell. He reflected. He mastered his inner world, so the outer world couldn't shake him. Your words are currency. Spend them wisely. Imagine this every time you speak. It costs you energy, it costs you mental bandwidth, and it gives away information. That means talking too much is like leaking your strategy before the battle begins. But when you adopt silence as your default mode, you conserve energy, you collect data, you become the observer, not the performer. And that is the ultimate edge. Because now, you see what others don't. You hear what they miss. And you're 10 steps ahead before they've even realized the game has started. Silence triggers curiosity and respect. Here's something people rarely understand. When you speak less, people lean in. They listen more carefully. They assume depth. They respect boundaries because you clearly have them. You're not playing for attention. You're playing for clarity, control, and the long game. This is how powerful men build influence quietly, with posture, with presence, with patience. And when they do speak, every word becomes a statement, every sentence a strategy. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's executive presence. And it begins with this: stop trying to be heard. Start mastering what's worth saying. Most people don't think, they react, and they react fast. It feels like thinking because their mind is busy. Their emotions are active, but what's actually happening is a mental shortcut. They're jumping to conclusions, driven by impulse, not insight. And this is why they fail. But Stoic thinkers, they don't respond on the surface. They operate in layers. They don't just ask, What is happening? They ask. What caused this? What isn't being said? What does this reaction reveal about the person, not the event? What's the cost of responding now versus waiting? This is layered thinking, and it's rare because it requires emotional detachment, clarity, and patience. 3 things most people never master. But if you do master them, you become dangerously smart. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to win the argument. You just understand the game better than everyone else, and that alone shifts the power in your direction. High performance thinking versus emotional reactivity. The average person is emotionally reckless. They pride themselves on speaking their truth and being real. But what they're actually doing is sabotaging their future for the comfort of the present. Marcus Aurelius would say, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." In other words, you control your perception. You control your power. Layered thinkers don't make quick judgments. They let the situation unfold. They gather context. They understand timing, patterns, and human behavior. This is what builds executive-level decision-making, because leadership isn't about knowing everything, it's about seeing what others can't. Play chess, not checkers. How to think in moves. Every emotionally impulsive person plays checkers. They make a move. You make a move. It's a game of reaction, and it's easy to predict. But layered thinkers play chess. They don't just react to what's in front of them. They think 3, 5, 10 moves ahead. They know that the real battle isn't loud. It's silent. It's psychological. That fake compliment, it's bait. That passive-aggressive jab, it's a test. That urgent crisis, it's a distraction. Most people fall into the trap because they're emotionally involved. But you've trained your mind to zoom out. You recognize that every situation is a pattern, not an isolated event. That's how you win without fighting. The layered thinker's edge in relationships. Business and conflict. Want to become untouchable in toxic environments. Want to navigate manipulation, pressure, and politics without losing your peace. Then stop answering immediately. Start observing. Ask yourself, what are they really trying to get from me? What happens if I say nothing? Where is this conversation actually going? Because people who are emotionally reckless will always show their hand too early. They'll over-explain, overreact, overexpose, and they'll mistake your silence for weakness until you make the move they never saw coming. In business, this is called strategic patience. In Stoicism, it's called self-mastery. In both cases, it's how the sharpest minds win. Stillness is your greatest strategy. When Marcus Aurelius journaled in the middle of political chaos, he didn't write rants. He wrote reflections, because stillness is where clarity lives. Stillness is where your decisions get stronger, your emotions get keener, and your strategy becomes unstoppable. Layered thinking starts with silence, but it ends with precision. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, manipulate you, or rush you, pause, observe, zoom out, and remember, the first person to react emotionally always loses control of the game. Most people think intelligence is about how much you know, but real intelligence, the kind that commands respect. Influence and dangerous power is about clarity, ruthless clarity, the ability to see things as they are, not as you wish they were. That's what Marcus Aurelius practiced, and that's what made him unshakable in a world full of chaos. You must understand what you're facing. Strip away appearances. Remove emotion. And look at the thing itself. Marcus Aurelius. This was more than a Stoic exercise. It was a war tactic. Because in life, clarity is power. The clearer your perception, the sharper your decisions, and sharp decisions cut through the fog that keeps others stuck. While most people are busy reacting, explaining, doubting, or pretending, they remain trapped in stories. Stories about how things should be. Stories about what others owe them. Stories that distract, dilute, and derail. But the Stoic mind rejects illusions. You don't chase comfort. You chase the truth. And the truth, by nature, is uncomfortable. It means looking at your life and saying, this relationship is draining me. This habit is killing my potential. This job is making me smaller, not greater. I am betraying myself by staying where I don't belong. That kind of thinking, most people run from it. But you run toward it. Because you know that seeing clearly, no matter how painful, is always better than living in denial. Clarity is the ultimate leadership skill. Every high-performance thinker, every executive mind, every elite strategist operates with brutal clarity. They don't confuse movement with progress. They don't confuse popularity with power. And they never confuse noise with meaning. They observe, analyze, and cut deep into what actually matters. That's why Marcus said, if you are disturbed by external things, it is not they that trouble you, but your own judgment of them. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Translation: master your lens, and you master your life. Because once you stop seeing through the fog of emotion, ego, and insecurity, you begin to move differently. People can feel it. They notice the calm in your energy, the precision in your words, the detachment in your presence, and it unsettles them. Why? Because most people aren't used to someone who can see through the performance. They're used to games, masks, and surface-level talk. But when you show up with clarity, when you don't react, don't explain, and don't chase you, expose the fog they've been hiding behind. And that's when people label you dangerous, not because you're violent, not because you're cruel, but because your mind has become a weapon. You don't get confused easily. You don't get manipulated easily. And you don't tolerate noise, lies, or emotional clutter. This is exactly what makes the Stoic philosophy so powerful. It trains your perception until it becomes razor sharp. And in a world flooded with illusion, that is rare, that is valuable, and yes, that is dangerous. But here's the twist. Ruthless clarity doesn't mean ruthless behavior. It means inner alignment. It means you act from principle, not pressure, from purpose, not panits. You become the kind of person who doesn't just think clearly, but lives clearly. Your environment becomes intentional. Your relationships become chosen. Your actions become deliberate. You stop explaining your boundaries. You enforce them. You stop hoping people will understand. You act anyway. You stop overthinking every move. You simply move with clarity and conviction. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed, unclear, or emotionally pulled in 5 directions, don't react. Get still. Get quiet. Get clear. Ask, what am I really seeing here? What's true? Regardless of how I feel about it. And then move like a man who has mastered his vision, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs men who see clearly and lead. There's a reason the wisest men in history spoke the least. It wasn't because they had nothing to say. It was because they knew that saying everything would strip them of power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The more we say, the less we control. The wise man speaks only when his words are more powerful than his silence." This is not just ancient advice. This is tactical restraint. In a noisy world where everyone is broadcasting, venting, defending, and over-explaining, silence becomes strategic. Because silence is misunderstood. It makes people uncomfortable. It makes them wonder. And it creates a space where your presence speaks louder than your voice ever could. Let's be clear. Selective silence is not passive. It's not cowardice. And it's not avoidance. It is deliberate, intentional, calculated. It's the mental discipline to withhold when your ego is begging to react. And that's what makes it so powerful. Think about this. When someone insults you and you don't react, who has the power? When someone tries to provoke you and you remain still, who dominates the moment every time you speak? You reveal your cards, your thoughts, your weaknesses, your emotional state. But when you stay silent, you keep your edge. You force others to reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. That's why silence is not absence. It's presence, amplified. It is the signature move of high-performance minds, of emotionally intelligent men, of leaders who don't need to prove anything, because here's the brutal truth. The average man tries to prove himself with words. The exceptional man proves himself by what he withholds. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't crave approval. He doesn't talk to be seen. He acts to be remembered. When people come to you with drama, manipulation, or bait, your silence is the ultimate rejection. When the world demands, you react instantly, speak quickly, answer emotionally. Your silence is the ultimate rebellion. And this kind of silence intimidates people. Why? Because it reveals their insecurity, not yours. It makes them realize, this man can't be baited. He's operating from something deeper. That something is philosophical composure. Marcus didn't waste words. He ruled an empire. He faced betrayal, war, loss, and constant pressure, but he chose silence, often not as weakness, but as strength. He knew what most people forget. Every word costs energy. Every reaction steals your time. And every emotional outburst lowers your value. So choose your moments. Choose your words. Don't argue to be right. Don't explain to be understood. Let your silence raise questions. Let your actions answer them. And remember, silence is control. Silence is mystery. Silence is power. When you master selective silence, you master attention, you master tension, you master influence without saying a word. You become the man people can't figure out. So, they have to respect you. And in a world addicted to noise, nothing is more dangerous than a man who knows when to be quiet and how to move with intention when he finally speaks. If intelligence is about solving problems, then emotional intelligence is about preventing them. The Stoics knew that life doesn't destroy you because of what happens, it destroys you because of how you react. And this is where most men fail. They build muscles, they build resumes, but they never build emotional discipline. Marcus Aurelius mastered this. He ruled an empire under pressure we can't imagine. He watched his friends turn into enemies, his health decline, his children but he didn't collapse. He didn't lose control. He didn't become the chaos that surrounded him. He wrote in his meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is emotional intelligence, and it's not about being soft. It's about being strategic. Because the man who can stay calm under pressure is a man who can't be manipulated. The man who can observe his anger without acting on it, he's unstoppable. The man who understands other people's emotions but doesn't absorb them, he's untouchable. That's dangerous. That's elite. Most people are slaves to their emotions. They react before they reflect. They speak before they think. They fight battles that don't matter and lose the wars that do. But the emotionally intelligent man, he chooses his battlefield. He asks, is this worth my energy? Is this reaction necessary? Will this bring peace or just feed my ego if the answer is no? He walks away quietly, with his dignity intact. You see, emotional intelligence isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about understanding them so well. They no longer control you. And this makes you dangerous in the best way, because when a man knows how to sit with his pain, to observe his anger without acting stupid, to feel envy and still choose admiration, that man becomes rare. And rare men become powerful. Why? Because they're not easily provoked. They're not fragile. They don't break when insulted, abandoned, or misunderstood. They translate emotion into insight. They use tension as fuel. And they rise above the noise, not by force, but by inner alignment. This is high-level self-mastery. This is what Marcus lived by. And this is what the modern man must reclaim in a world where emotional chaos is the default. So next time someone disrespects you, don't get loud. Get calm. When things fall apart, don't panic. Pause. When you feel misunderstood, don't rush to explain. Elevate. Let your peace become your power. Let your restraint become your weapon. Let your emotional intelligence become your quiet dominance. Because in a world of impulsive men, the one who feels deeply but moves wisely will always be 10 steps ahead. In a world obsessed with noise, solitude is rebellion. Most people are terrified of being alone, not because they dislike solitude, but because they fear meeting themselves in silence. But the wisest men throughout history, they chose isolation strategically. They didn't run from the world. They stepped back to see it more clearly. Marcus Aurelius was surrounded by generals, politicians, and flatterers. Yet, in his quiet moments, He wrote to himself, not for applause, but for alignment. He understood what most modern men forget. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Meditations. Book 4. You don't become dangerously smart by following the crowd. You don't evolve by surrounding yourself with people who fear growth. And you certainly don't sharpen your vision in rooms full of ego, gossip, and distraction. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's strategy. It's where you think deeply, read broadly, and plan ruthlessly. It's where you ask hard questions. Who am I becoming? What's holding me back? Am I living by design or by default? And if the answers are uncomfortable, good, because that discomfort is clarity, and clarity is a weapon. But here's the thing most people don't understand. The journey of becoming dangerously smart requires you to detach not just from others, but from the version of yourself that craves validation. You must be willing to walk away from shallow conversations, from meaningless friendships, from the comfort of being liked. You must be okay being misunderstood, doubted, and even disliked, because growth doesn't look polite. It looks lonely. It looks quiet. It looks like a man sitting in his room, reading Marcus Aurelius at 2 a.m. while everyone else is chasing dopamine and distraction. This is the price of clarity, and the reward. You start to see patterns others don't. You recognize manipulation before it happens. You read between the lines. You master restraint. You become dangerous, not because you seek control, but because you no longer need it. When you return to the world, you speak less, but say more. You move slower, but with precision. You trust fewer people, but with deeper loyalty. And that's when people start noticing something's different about you. They don't know what it is, but they can feel it. That's the aura of a man who has walked alone and returned aligned. Let others chase clout. Let them post for validation. Let them gather in empty crowds, afraid of silence. You walk your path in silence, with strategy, and with purpose, because here's the truth. The mind grows sharper in isolation. The soul grows deeper in stillness. And the man who masters both becomes unshakable. You can yell. You can argue. You can react impulsively to every insult, setback, or provocation, but you won't win. Because power doesn't come from explosion, it comes from containment. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the world, and yet he wrote more about self-control than about conquest. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Meditations. Book 6. In today's world, where outrage is a currency and emotional reactivity is rewarded with attention, stillness becomes a form of defiance. But it's not passivity. It's discipline. Restraint is not weakness. It's precision. It's knowing exactly what you could say and choosing not to. It's having the upper hand in a situation and walking away without proving it. It's being underestimated and allowing it to work in your favor. Because here's what emotional intelligence teaches us. The more you react, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. But when you practice restraint, you become unreadable, unshakable, untouchable. Imagine being the man in the room who doesn't flinch when insulted, who doesn't beg for recognition, who doesn't need to prove his point because he's already proven to himself who he is. That man has power, not because he dominates others, but because he's mastered himself. And that mastery begins in moments most men waste. The moment you're tempted to argue online, you go silent. The moment you want revenge, you let karma handle it. The moment someone tests your patience, you smile because you've trained for this. This is high-performance emotional control. This is executive-level stoicism. This is what makes people respect you, even if they can't explain why. Because in a world of men who chase control, the one who doesn't need it owns it. Self-restraint is what allows you to lead under pressure, win without noise, love without attachment, decide without fear. And when life throws chaos at you, as it always does, you're not swept away. You stand still. You breathe. You act with clarity. Not emotion. People start to wonder, why doesn't he get angry? Why doesn't he chase approval? Why does he always seem in control? The answer: because you've trained in silence what they've never faced in noise. You've gone to war with your emotions and won. You've mastered the pause before the reaction. And now, your restraint is not just personal, it's strategic. You don't need to dominate. Your presence does it for you. You don't need to speak. Your silence says more than their loudest words. In every room you enter, your energy precedes your voice, and your restraint speaks volumes about your strength. So the next time life pulls at your emotions, remember, you are not here to react. You are here to respond, and response calm, clear, calculated, is the mark of a dangerously intelligent man. Pain will visit you. That's not a threat. That's a guarantee. You will be betrayed. You will lose people. You will be ignored, overlooked, mocked, and misjudged. The question is not if, it's what you do with it. Marcus Aurelius never asked for a life without pain. He asked for the strength to endure it and the wisdom to use it. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Meditations. Book 5. This is the Stoics' alchemy. The ability to take suffering and forge it into sharpness every time life cuts you. You have two choices. Let it bleed you out emotionally, or sharpen yourself against it and become more precise. Because here's the truth. You don't become dangerously intelligent by reading books alone. You become it by surviving what others collapse under. Pain, when examined, becomes data. Pain, when endured, becomes endurance. Pain, when accepted, becomes wisdom. Think about it. That heartbreak, it taught you how blind your loyalty once was. That failure, it exposed your weak strategy. That humiliation, it burned away your ego and made room for humility. Every wound is a teacher. Every scar is a silent mentor. And if you're willing to sit with the pain instead of running from it, you start to see clearly who's truly loyal and who was just convenient. What you were chasing that didn't align with your values. Where you were wasting your energy trying to fix people who didn't want healing. This is emotional intelligence in action. This is mental health at its core. Facing reality without flinching. Because pain is not the enemy. Unprocessed pain is. You want precision in life. Learn from your suffering. You want to lead with clarity. Reflect on your failures. You want emotional power. Stop hiding from discomfort. The most dangerous man in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who has suffered deeply and still moves with peace. Because that man knows something most never learn. That chaos outside you means nothing if there is order within. So don't throw away your pain. Don't bury it. Don't pretend it never happened. Instead, record it. Review it. Refine yourself through it. And the next time someone underestimates you, they won't know. You've been sharpened by fire. You've buried versions of yourself they'll never meet. And you've trained your mind where others lost theirs. This is your edge. Not rage, not revenge. But refinement. Use your pain like a sword, not to destroy others, but to carve out the best version of yourself. There's a man who walks into the room, and without saying a word, the energy shifts. Not because he's loud, not because he's dressed in luxury, but because he's mastered something far more rare, self-command. You see, when you no longer react like everyone else, you become unplayable in the game of life. This was Marcus Aurelius, an emperor yet untouchable by flattery, powerful yet immune to praise, surrounded by politics and poison, but calm, deliberate, focused. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Most people today are easy to control. They're manipulated by attention. They need validation. They react to insults. They chase pleasure like addicts. But not you. Not anymore. You've trained your mind. You've taken your pain and turned it into perception. You've replaced your need for noise with stillness, and you've discovered the rarest kind of freedom, the ability to choose your response. No matter the pressure, that's when you become dangerous. Because the world can't use you if you don't need it. It can't bait you with fame if you don't crave attention. It can't control you with fear if you've accepted death. It can't manipulate you with love if you already love yourself. You are no longer a slave to moods, no longer triggered by fools, no longer shaken by loss. You see through manipulation like glass. That fake smile at work, you clock it. That guilt trip from a friend, you breathe through it. That tempting opportunity that compromises your principles, you pass without flinching. Because you don't move for applause anymore, you move with intention. This is executive mindset. This is high-performance emotional intelligence. This is Stoic leadership, not by title, not by power, but by control of the only thing that truly matters, yourself. You've become a man no one can manipulate. Why? Because you've already stripped yourself of illusions. You don't fear solitude. You don't chase shallow love. You don't beg for peace, you build it. And now you lead your life the way Marcus Aurelius led an empire, not by dominating others, but by mastering yourself. And here's the twist most people never understand. It's not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Clear on your values. Clear on your boundaries. Clear on who you are and who you will never be again. That clarity intimidates people who thrive on confusion. It silences manipulators. It forces people to either level up or leave. And that's a good thing. Because from here on out, You don't shrink to fit rooms where your soul can't breathe. You don't entertain chaos to feel needed. You don't explain your growth to those still addicted to comfort. You move like a man who doesn't owe anyone a performance. And in doing so, you become the rarest kind of power in this world. Unshakable, unbothered, unmoved, but always in command. So the next time someone asks you what you're trying to be,